Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. If you can kindly get the verse up. Thank you, Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Prayena Muniyo Rajan Nivritta Vidishetaha Nairgunyastaramanti Sma Gunanu Kathane Hare Prayena Muniyo Rajan Nivritta Vidishedata Nairgunyastaramanti Sma Gunanu Kathane Hare Prayena Muniyo Rajan Nivritta Vidishedata Nairgunyastaramanti Sma Gunanu Kathane Hare. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prayena, mainly. Muniya, all sages. Rajan, O king. Nivrittaha, above. Vidhi, regulative principles. Shedataha, from restrictions. Nairgunya, staha, transcendently situated. Ramante, take pleasure in. Sma, distinctly. Guna anukathane, describing the glories. Hare, of the Lord. Translation. O King Parikshit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists who are above the regulative principles and restrictions take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord. Would anyone like to read the purport?
I can read, Prabhu.
Please go ahead, Mataji.
The topmost transcendentalist is a liberated soul and is therefore not within the purview of the regulative principles. A neophyte who is intended to be promoted to the spiritual plane is guided by the spiritual master under regulative principles. He may be compared to a patient who is treated by various restrictions under medical jurisdiction. Generally, liberated souls also take pleasure in describing the transcendental activities. As mentioned above, since Narayan, Hari, the personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation, his form and attributes are not material. The topmost transcendentalists or the liberated souls realize him by advanced experience of transcendental knowledge, and therefore they take pleasure in the discussion of the transcendental qualities of the Lord's pastimes. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.9, the personality of Godhead declares that his appearance and activities are all divyam or transcendental. The common man who is under the spell of material energy takes it for granted that the Lord is like one of us, and therefore he refuses to accept the transcendental nature of the Lord's form, name, etc. The topmost transcendentalist is not interested in anything material, and his taking interest in the matter of the Lord's activities is definite proof that the Lord is not like one of us in the material world. In the Vedic literatures also, it is confirmed that the Supreme Lord is one, but that he is engaged in his transcendental pastimes in the company of his unalloyed devotees, and that simultaneously he is present as the Super Soul, an expansion of Baldev, in the heart of all living entities. Therefore, the highest perfection of transcendental realization is to take pleasure in hearing and describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord and not in merging into his impersonal Brahman existence, for which the impersonalist monist aspires. Real transcendental pleasure is realized in the glorification of the transcendental Lord and not in the feeling of being situated in his impersonal feature. But there are also others who are not the topmost transcendentalists, but are in a lower status and who do not take pleasure in describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Rather, they discuss such activities of the Lord formally with the aim of merging into his existence. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhayati Naistaki. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining as we discuss the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we are studying Canto 2, Chapter 1, text number 7. So in yesterday's class, His Grace Sakira Prabhu explained about Antakala, Antanarayana Smriti. So that is perfection of life is when we remember the personality of Godhead at the end of our life. Right? So now this verse, when we read, it talks more about how we lead our lives to reach that stage of Antanarayana Smriti. Right? So in this verse, the Paramhansa stage is described. Yes? The word Muniyo means, so Prayena Muniyo Rajan. Prayena means great sages. It says Nivritti Vidhi Sedataha, meaning that they are above the regulative principles. So Vidhi Sedataha, Vidhi means the do's, like our chanting, our rounds, all the things that are favorable to Krishna consciousness. And Nisedha means the don'ts, that are things that are unfavorable to our Krishna consciousness. So in that way, Srila Prabhupada explains that a Paramhamsa devotee is not someone who is careless or whimsical about his spiritual practice. The word Paramhamsa literally means a supreme swan. Right? A swan is someone who can extract milk from a mixture of milk and water. So in the same way, a Paramhamsa can extract spiritual essence, pure spiritual essence, from a mixture from this material and spiritual world that we live in. Right? So the energies are there, material energy is there, spiritual energy is there, but a Paramhamsa can extract that spiritual energy even while we are in this material world. So that is what has been described here. So when it is said in the translation for Nair Gunya, right, it said that it is above regulative principles. That's right. It says it's above regulative principles. So it means that not that they are above the regulative principles, so to speak, that they no longer to do it. They no longer have to do it. The main reason behind what Prabhupada is trying to say here is that there is no need for that, because they are already completely absorbed very, very naturally in Krishna consciousness all the time. Rising early, chanting, following all the principles, it just comes naturally to them. It's spontaneous. It's an expression of love that comes spontaneously to them. So when we look at it, I always look for examples. So when we look at it, we can't go further than Srila Prabhupada himself to see the pinnacle of spiritual life that he had reached, right? So you can see Srila Prabhupada. We all have heard about it, but the more times we mention it, the more we can live it. He had only 40 rupees when he went to America. Old 70-year-old man. Couple of heart attacks on the way. Just imagine. I recently had a surgery, and it was nothing big. It was very, very small surgery, but I can just imagine. I was just completely knocked out for a couple of weeks. And then look at Prabhupada, 2 heart attacks without any medical attendance. How he would have been able to do it, right? In a country completely unknown, the language is foreign, everything is foreign. Though he obviously knew English, but everything was foreign to him. The way of life, the people, no contacts, or hardly any contacts, I should say. So even in that stage, he was completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, Paramhamsa. Haridas Thakur also, we can discuss the example of Haridas Thakur. He was born in a Muslim family. He used to chant about 300,000 names every day. They sent a prostitute to him to entice him. But he said, hey, let me chant for 3 days and then I'll attend to you. And then after 3 days, what happened? The prostitute started chanting. She was completely converted, right? So like that, we see these examples. But there are also a lot of examples, like a lot of Prabhupada disciples also. They were on that stage where Prabhupada himself described some of them as being very, very elevated. And one such example comes to mind is of Jayananda Prabhu. He is most famous for his photo on every cart that of Rath Yatra that happens globally. Right? So he was a very, very humble devotee, very young. He dedicated his full life to Krishna consciousness. He was from San Francisco in the Bay Area. And all his money, I think it was about $5,000 that he had, he completely gave. At that stage, $5,000 was a lot of money. He still gave everything to Srila Prabhupada, and he moved in to the temple. He used to drive. He was, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he was a mechanical engineer or something of that sort. And he ended up being a taxi driver. And all the money that he had, he gave again to the maintenance of the temple. And he was one of the main earners for the temple, by which the temple was being supported. Right? It was said that he meets anyone, whether that be a devotee or someone at the markets or whatever he should do, everyone he should be very, very genuinely nice to, genuinely interested in. He saw everyone equally. So like that, we see a lot of Paramahansa devotees. I can give a lot of examples like that. Even a lot of our gurus are you can see they're at that stage. They're completely absorbed in Krishna, in devotional activity and so on. But also, it's very interesting that Srila Prabhupada also warns us that we cannot imitate these devotees prematurely. Right? We cannot say that we can neglect these rules, and that we are completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness like that. Now, one such example that comes to mind, one such story that comes to mind is of a Brahmana and cobbler. It's a very famous story. Where the story goes like something like this, where Narad Muni was once traveling, and he saw a Brahmana, and he said, "Are you going to? Oh, hey, Narad Muni, are you going to see the Lord?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Would you please ask him, when am I going to be liberated?" And then Narad Muni said, "Yes, of course, dear Brahmana, I can ask him." And then, as Narad Muni went a bit further, he saw a cobbler who was sitting under a big banyan tree, doing his thing. And he asked a similar question. I said, "Hey, where are you going, Narad Muni?" And he said, "Can you please inquire from the Lord, when am I going to be liberated?" And he said, "Yes, of course I can." So when Narad Muni reached Lord Narayan, he asked the question about the Brahmana, and the cobbler asked him. He said, "When are they going to be liberated?" And then Lord Narayan said, "Look, after leaving their body, the cobbler shall come to me." And then the Narad Muni was a bit perplexed. He said, "What about the Brahmana?" He said, "He will have to remain there for a few births, and then he can come back to me." So Narad Muni was very astonished, and he finally said, "I don't understand why, And then Lord Narayan said, "That you will see." So he said, "So when you go back, and when they ask you, they will ask you, what the Lord was doing when you saw him. Just tell him that I was threading the eye of a needle with an elephant." So when Narada Muni returned back to earth, and when he approached the Brahmana, he said, "Oh, have you seen the Lord? What was he doing?" And then Narada Muni replied, as Lord Narayana instructed him. He replied that, hey, he was threading an elephant to the needle of an eye. And Brahmana replied, "Oh, no, I don't believe all of those nonsense." And when he said that, Narad Muni immediately understood that the man didn't have a lot of faith. He was simply, quote unquote, imitating or just, a reader of books, so to speak. Then Narad Muni left there, and he went to the cobbler next. And he asked the same question. "Oh, Narad Muni, have you seen the Lord? What was he doing?" He said, "Hey, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle." Same answer. And the cobbler began to weep. He said, "Oh, my Lord is so wonderful. He can do anything." And then he said, then Narad Muni wanted to test him. So he asked him, "Do you really believe that the Lord can push an elephant through the eye of a needle?" And then the cobbler replied, "Why not? I definitely believe it." And he's like, then Narad Muni said, "Why do you believe him?" And then he gave the example. It's like, you can see I'm sitting under a big banyan tree. Many fruits are falling from the tree. And you can see that each seed is like each seed has a banyan tree within them. So if a small seed can, a Lord by his potency can grow into a big banyan tree, what is it for the Lord for pushing an elephant through the eye of a needle? So the point I'm trying to make with this story is you can see that we have to have complete faith, right? We don't have to be blind believers, right? But we have to have complete faith in Krishna. So even a cobbler had that, but a brahmana, you'd imagine to be a learned brahmana, he didn't have that faith. So it's mentioned in the word, in the verse, Nair Gunya Stha. It's like we have to be situated beyond the three modes of material nature: mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, sattva guna, rajagun, and tamagun. So how do we achieve that is a big question, right? So gunanu kathane hare. That's what's mentioned in the verse again. It says gunanu kathane hare. That we are constantly, by constantly being absorbed in Krishna's pastimes, in Krishna's quality, in Krishna's name. So these Paramhansas, they have completely dedicated every breath they have to Krishna. Yeah. So they do not wait a single second, like I gave the example of Haridas Thakur. Even Srila Prabhupada, as we know, completely gave up sleeping. Almost he was just sleeping for a couple of hours, wake up 1 o'clock, translating, chanting, Mangalarati, the morning program, and then whatever else he had to do. So you can see like that. So I have, when I was thinking about this, I was meditating on this last night. One thing came to mind that, I have this belief, right? I have this faith that all of us are here. How many of us we got here today? We got 20-something people, like almost 30 people here. Now, all of us are here. I have this belief that there is some experience we would have had, whether that be in a kirtan, whether that be, in reading scriptures, whether that be in taking darshan or doing deity worship or cooking prasadam or whatever service we've done. We've had this experience, even though it might be a minute experience for a millisecond or a microsecond, but we have had this experience of being completely absorbed and being completely, have full faith and full surrender, even though it's for a microsecond or a millisecond. We've all had that experience. And that's what pushes us to keep coming back again and again and again. Right? Prabhupada says, as I said, mentioned earlier, that we should not be imitating. Yes, we're not trying to imitate here, but we are trying to reach that stage. Right? So Prabhupada established ISKCON. Prabhupada established this Krishna conscious movement in the West is so that we can traverse to that stage of Paramhansa, become slowly purified. So this microsecond can become a second, can become a minute, can become an hour, a day, a month, a week, a month, and so on, a year, and so on, right? And a lifetime. And then as Sakira Prabhu explained yesterday, Anta Narayana Smriti, right? So then we can perfect our life like that. But Prabhupada also has, I was reading this, one of the lectures by Srila Prabhupada, and he also emphatically says that we should not, he's very, very emphatic that we should not imitate others. I've been associating with devotees for about 19-20 years, and I have come across a couple of times where there are some people who they think they don't want to chant. If they don't chant, it's okay. Not that they don't want to chant, but they don't chant today, it's okay. So, we should not be imitating, right? Prabhupada has also compared in that commentary, he compared this sort of feeling or this sort of action to Shunyavadi philosophies, like Buddhism and so on, where the state of desirelessness, right? That he says that because our soul is active, right? So we cannot not desire. That is our nature, the nature of the soul. So we need to negate. We need to negate the desires with a higher purpose. So in Bhagavad Gita, 2.59, famous verse, says Param Drishtva Nivartate. That we should give up our lower desires by tasting something that is higher. So in Krishna consciousness, these higher tastes come from, I think I've said it in the past also, but Vaishashika Prabhu says it very, very nicely and it really resonates with me. like Krishna consciousness is simple. So we can replace the lower taste by higher taste just by ABCD. Association, books, chanting, and diet, which is prasadam. So Prabhupada also shared one example where he said that in the 60s and the 70s, the US government, when Prabhupada was there in America, mainly preaching, the US government at that stage spent millions of dollars during those times to counteract the effects of LSD. That's because people were so intoxicated, people were so addicted or getting addicted, but nothing happened. They couldn't curb that addiction, the drug addiction that people had gotten themselves into. And Prabhupada gives the example that because the reason this happened was because there was no other alternative. There was no positive alternative. Yes, they were trying to curb something negative, but to curb that, we need to give them something positive. So when Prabhupada introduced Krishna consciousness to the same hippies, the same people who were addicted, their life completely transformed. So you can see with this sort of an example that when we replace something lower with something higher, param drishtva nivartate, that we give up our lower desires for something higher, then by engaging ourselves in Krishna consciousness, then we can, get onto that stage of being a Paramhansa. So, I think again, when I was talking about this, I just naturally thought about myself. I said, okay, what are the habits that I have given up? Yes, I was never addicted to drugs, but there are other things that I was sort of so conditioned to, right? Say, watching TV as a kid, right? Watching a lot of TV, even growing up, right? You do all of those things, sleeping late, waking up late again, which means, so, you just think about, okay, what are the habits? So, if we can all think about, where we were and where we've come from, you'll see a big change. Yes, we need to reach to the Paramahansa stage, but in my opinion, it is also very important to know where we were and where we've come to, and obviously where we are going, right? So it's very important to have that assessment. So like that, we all are here, and I think it's early enough for us. We all wake up early, chant our rounds, do our worship at home, make prasadam and so on, and get on with our day, and nourish ourselves. So we all have come further like that. And like Prabhupada gave the example of giving up our lower nature and getting something higher. So in Bhagavad Gita 2.45, it says, Traigunya Vishriya Veda Nistraiguno Bhavarjuna. So Traigunya means that we are stuck in the three modes of nature. But in this verse, it says Nairgunya, which is rising above those modes, right? So Prabhupada emphasizes the very, very simple process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So that is the platform that lifts us. That is the process that lifts us onto the higher platform. So this is why Prabhupada gave us so many books. Tirelessly, he translated all of these books for our benefit. He urges us to read them, reduce our sleeping or sleep on time and wake up on time or wake up early, right? Before sunrise in the Brahma Muhurat. Eating prasadam only, reducing our sense enjoyment and getting to the stage of no sense enjoyment. He gave us the examples of all the Goswamis of how they conquered all of these things, right? They conquered over their sleep, food, and even any sort of sense gratification, completely gave up. So another verse that sort of resonated to me, and it's sort of my go-to verse in a lot of ways, and it sort of relates with this one, is 18.54 from the Bhagavad Gita. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. And in that state, he achieves pure devotional service to me. Yeah. So it refers again to the word Nairgunya. That's why I wanted to sort of discuss this verse from Bhagavad Gita. It is because we are beyond the modes of material nature, beyond, even mode of goodness has some, it'll have, we'll attract some karmas, even when we're in the mode of goodness, right? So what this verse, today's verse, is teaching us that we should not be 90% or 95% engaged. We need to be 100% engaged. We need to get to the stage where we are 100% engaged. 90% won't do, 95% won't do, 99% won't do, 100% will do. Yeah. So Brahma Bhuta, right? So that's a real spiritual consciousness. So two things that Prabhupada emphasized was that we cannot fake it, right? So na sochati, na kankshati. This is that when anything happens to us, we cannot be, we should not be lamenting. Na sochati is no lamentation, no kankshati is no hankering for what we've lost, right? So Brahma Bhuta, Prasanna Atma. Prasanna Atma means is joyful, right? So joyful is when we are not lamenting or we're not hankering for anything. Prabhupada at one place gives the example that, in this material world, when we get something, but we really, when we want something, right, we are dancing like a monkey. Oh, I got this. Oh, yes, yes, I got this. He said we should not be dancing like a monkey when we get something. Yes, we can dance like a monkey in Krishna's service, but we cannot be dancing for when we get something material and so on, right? Because it's Krishna's property. Everything is Krishna at the end of the day. It's not yours or mine. It is all Krishna's. So then comes sama sarveshu bhuteshu. That is, we should look equally towards others. There should be equality towards all, whether that be a friend or an enemy. We should all we should look at every soul, as someone who's temporarily trapped in a material body. We need to have compassion for everyone like that. And how do we sustain to such a state? Is by Nairgunya, which is rising above the modes. Otherwise, as I said earlier, even goodness will some way or the other bind us, right? So Prabhupada used to say, even so-called good activities in the material world can bind us, whether it be a family. Yes, we've got our duties towards our families and friends and so on, and our peers and so on. But at the end of the day, we need to rise above this. We need to go into the Sattva Guna, right? So, couple of minutes to go. I always like to end with something practical, right? So yes, this verse talks about Paramhamsa devotees, but we also have to be careful that we don't fake it, right? We are on the journey, right? We are all in different parts of a journey. Am I there? Definitely not. Do I want to get there? Absolutely. But there is this whole space in the middle that we need to sort of work on, right? Each one needs to work on ourselves, and we all have to be introspective. We all know where we are. No one needs to tell us, where we are. We can really contemplate. We can really know. We need simple things that we need to do right. We need to make our life simple, reduce time that we spend on mundane activities. It's difficult, but slowly, it's definitely possible, right? It's we're coming up to Janmashtami. We can see so many people engaged. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they were saying that they were at the temple on Sunday, and it was a hub of activity on Sunday night. Right? Everyone is engaged. People are practicing for their performances. Organizers for the festival are busy doing that. There are a lot of people come through. The tents are there. So you can see that we need to constantly engage. There is always a reason to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. Yes, festival sort of supercharges that, but there will always be, engaging in deity worship in the morning, speaking about Krishna, attending these classes that we do every day, Bhagavad Gita study groups that we got, Bhagavatam study that we do every day, following our regulative principles, chanting attentively, and so on. So we can all do a little bit. So in conclusion, I just wanted to say that Srila Prabhupada, through this verse, is trying to, the learning for me was that Srila Prabhupada is trying to tell us to be sincere, yes, not to be imitative, but follow our regulated principles and just be immersed, right, in hearing and chanting about Krishna. We should not have blind faith. Prabhupada often gives the example of the world leaders. It's like the blind leading the blind, and he called them, lowly world leaders, right? But instead, we need to inspire each other, make friendships with devotees, associate, chant, and dance together. So it's just gone past 7, so I would like to stop here. If there are any questions, corrections, or comments, please feel free to unmute yourself and share. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
It's just the contemplating of how that you mentioned about the fake it when you go in the Krishna consciousness, and I really believe that you can't fake it, because when you are believe in God, even you're not Krishna consciousness or Krishna consciousness, if you go in the church, if you go in the temple, you feel the vibration, or when you see the deities, and you have to hear the song of Krishna songs, you have teary in your eyes, and when it's done in the arti and this you feel alive, you feel like Krishna's with you, because you cry and you feel the love and the emotion in there. So even associate with the devotees, you can feel that there is love and faith of the people that going in the temple. And it's really hard if you can't fake it, because you can't, if you fake it, people can't dance or can't they walk away from the temple, because they can't see that they can't handle the truth that there is Krishna in there. That's all, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Madhu.
Can I say just one quick thing?
Yeah,
You
sure.
about Srila Prabhupada, Srila Paramahamsa, and all the hardships that he has gone through for us. And then you mentioned about Janmashtami preparations, and I was just thinking, before we get too busy with Janmashtami preparations, which is already happening, let's not forget to write our Vyas Puja offering for Srila Prabhupada. That is the most important. I believe that is one of the most important things we can offer to Srila Prabhupada on his Vyasa Puja, which is on the 17th of August. So now that we have time, let's, or if we don't have time, let's find time to write an offering for him and everything that he has done. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It's a big festival on Sunday. In some ways, it's a bigger festival for us devotees, followers of Prabhupada. So yeah, please, as Sneha mentioned, please endeavor to write an offering, a heartfelt offering. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone once again for joining. Continue tomorrow, and we'll hopefully, Krishna willing, we'll have your association. Hare Krishna, have a blissful day.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the class.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Prabhu, Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.